If you bring somebody in who scratches her head and does not know what a woman is when she's being asked as a front off for part of the Rainbow Coalition, such as it now exists, then don't talk to me about Clarence Thomas. There were a lot of judges who knew this woman who thought she was not the one.
What's the
Well,
solution
let
here?
me tell you something. First off, what they dealt with is not affirmative action. I actually helped set up affirmative action at UCLA. I came along when it hadn't been invented. I got through the front door, but we had a problem that we were trying to address, and it was a coalition, not just black folk. It was Hispanics, it was Asians, and particularly the Japanese that helped get affirmative action, what became that setup, as well as the Native Americans. Well, the Biden administration, which you just confused with the Obama administration, is essentially one and the same. They are confusing themselves with the National Socialist Workers Party. And you've heard of the National Socialist Workers Party by another name. It's their German acronym. It's known as Nazi. So that kind of fascist repressive behavior where you control the dialogue and control speech is very bad for the country.
Judge Joe Brown, he's an American, a former lawyer and television personality, a former Shelby County, Tennessee criminal court judge, and is now running for mayor of Memphis. But most importantly, he's the creator of Judge Joe Brown's all-natural barbecue sauce, original and spicy. So let's bring this spicy fellow on. Judge Joe Brown, thanks for being with us right now. Speaking of something that has some heat, you said you've been stuck in the heat right now?
Oh, yeah, this is the fourth time I've had power go out in the last 10 days in Memphis. Everything's going to hell around here. You can't put your dog out on the street to have him go do his stuff because if he takes a pee on the sidewalk, the power will go down.
Oh
But
my
it's been
goodness.
out for 14 hours so far, so it
Just
is what
another
it is.
reason that Memphis needs new leadership, right?
They need me. I'll take care of it. I'll see that we get energy and use the river down here to develop some hydroelectric power with modular generators that they use in tidal flows. But we've got this 24/7 mighty Mississippi. So nobody seems to have thought of it, but here's yours truly. Now, let me not go there. That's so boring. It's just water flowing.
All
And
right.
by the way, that cut out too around here, so that doesn't even run.
Oh my goodness. So definitely Memphis needs some new leadership. But because you spent so long as a judge and you've just been a very objective and fair, want to get your take on some legal things that have been happening. You know, Missouri versus Biden has been the most promising thing that we've seen in terms of holding the Biden administration accountable, in terms of them basically asking all the government agencies asking that certain people be censored or certain information not be allowed to appear, well, unless it had a note or something. But this case has been going on for a while, and the latest development, to my understanding, has been a judge issuing an injunction saying that the Obama administration absolutely has to stop communicating with these social media companies and essentially directing them what to do. Now, no sooner has this injunction happened that the Biden administration is appealing that. They're basically saying, no, we want to continue to control what people see and hear. And so, what is your take on how this has been playing out?
Well, the Biden administration, which you just confused with the Obama administration, is essentially one and the same. They are confusing themselves with the National Socialist Workers Party. And you've heard of the National Socialist Workers Party by another name. It's their German acronym. It's known as Nazi. So that kind of fascist repressive behavior where you control the dialogue and control speech is very bad for the country. So I would say this is very good on behalf of the judge, who seems to be a Trump appointee. And I'm glad somebody had the backbone to stand up judicially to this nonsense. It's poisonous, and they have no business threatening, and that's all they've been doing, media, with retaliation if they don't go along with censoring anything that's in opposition to their sick positions. We don't need that in this country. This is America, and the First Amendment means what it means. There's free speech, and it's not when the speech disagrees with the party line. Uh, Something that entitles anybody to say we have a right to suppress it or we have the power and authority to, even if not the right. So this administration seems to have, and the current incumbent in the White House has a long history of disregarding the tenets of American due process and constitutional law. It's not surprising.
Do you think that they'll ever, I mean, their main argument with this, I mean, and the article we showed was from The Hill, and it was the ex-Obama AG, which again exposes how it's all one and the same. Oh,
He's an
Biden is
idiot.
a
He's
puppet.
an idiot. He's an idiot.
But his
One
argument
of the
is
most
like,
ineffective
the,
attorney generals we've had in a long time, so I don't abide by it. I've got more experience in this craft than he does and went to an equally impressive law school. So I've been doing it longer than him. I vehemently disagree with most of what he's done. So this is another example. I'm not surprised, and that's nonsense, and he ought to be ashamed of himself as a former Attorney General of the United States, taking the posture that anybody in government or elsewhere has an authority to restrict what the citizens have to say in their dialogues on the issues. This is not a matter of national security. This is a matter of their social agenda being damaged or confronted by opposition. And they're too deep into this thing of tell a lie long enough, loud enough, you can get anyone, including the liar, to believe it. And that's what they've been attempting to do with a social agenda that is poisonous to most people. In fact, everybody, but they think they are the ones that get a chance to impose it on the rest of us.
well, these elitists, Biden, Obama and Biden, and all the people that are wrapped up in that circle, they have been continually showing animosity to the courts that actually are trying to uphold the rule of law that they say that they respect and are trying to adhere to the Constitution. You and I have talked about the most recent Supreme Court rulings. And, you know, we continue to see not only animosity with Joe Biden saying, oh, well, this is not an ordinary court, whatever the heck that means, but also we have the hypocrisy of it. You know, Joe Biden, he said he wants to crack down on privilege in education as a way of defending the long practice of affirmative action and also getting other people to pay for other people's loan debt. But according to, you know, this article, he once called on UPenn's president to get his granddaughter in. There's information from FOIL requests that show that there was emails going back and forth, and I believe this was on Hunter Biden's laptop as well. So they continue to
By the
just
way,
do as I say,
a
not as I do.
correction. It's not his laptop. It's three of them. I was the judge that ran this moot proceeding at the beginning of the year that Fox put on. We brought in the technician who repaired them, and it's three of them, and we got to go through the entirety of the download for three
Wow.
laptops, and somebody is in a bad position who has been doing some very bad things that need to be exposed, and we don't need that kind of protection coming from official circles for wrongdoing. And by the way, the person that was bragging years ago about one rock gets you 5 years seems to be somebody that's in place with not White House. He's running the crack house now. So we have an incumbent in the crack house. And if you notice the stories that they're trying to manipulate, where the cocaine was either found in a common foyer where a lot of people got through, or the library is very restricted, or the executive office area, which is security restricted. Oh, it's really getting interesting. Take that as a note
Yeah,
on what's
I mean,
actually
how can people buy this at this point? Because the story has changed so many times on where it's like a game of Clue. Was it in the library or in the bar area? Or they've changed where it was found multiple times. Now you have Secret Service saying they may never find who brought this cocaine in. But you're telling me that in the White House, where there's cameras everywhere, where there were clearly going to be able to get fingerprints or some kind of DNA on this thing. And then you have a known former drug addict there that day. I mean, come on. Like, do they actually expect people to believe?
Wait, they want us to believe that in the most secure, heavily cameraed, heavily policed, most controlled place in the entirety of the United States. They can't get a camera on who's doing it. But you notice that thing that's out on Twitter. They've got Hunter up there looking like he's taking a hit as he's walking away from this woman on the balcony. So, I mean, hey, relapse. And by the way, I'm not impressed with his nominees to the Supreme Court, including the last one that, wow, couldn't even take judicial notice of what a woman is because she doesn't know. You've got a U.S. Supreme Court justice sitting, looks like she's female, I guess, but she doesn't know what a woman is.
She's
That's
not sure what she is. She's
And
not sure
then
what
you
she
got the Rat
identifies as
House
yet.
and not the White House. And the latest justice doesn't know what a woman is and she looks like one herself. Oh, come on now. What have we got going here? Is this Cartoon Network or something?
It's ridiculous. When we've had the opportunity to talk about the recent Supreme Court decisions, you said that you think that the Supreme Court got it right, that
And they did.
this wasn't constitutional. Yes, but let me ask you this: for those that really have those hurdles, I mean, should this, instead of being based on a skin color thing, which is clearly not being equitable, could it be looked at more as socioeconomic status, like people in certain neighborhoods that have had a hard time getting out of a systemic situation?
Well,
I mean, could it be more based on that as opposed to just straight race? What's the solution here?
let me tell you something. First off, what they dealt with is not affirmative action. I actually helped set up affirmative action at UCLA. I came along when it hadn't been invented. I got through the front door, but we had a problem that we were trying to address, and it was a coalition, not just black folk. It was Hispanics, it was Asians, and particularly the Japanese that helped get affirmative action, what became that setup, as well as the Native Americans. What had happened was most universities had something in their catalog that said admission will be based on a competitive assessment of grade point average, aptitude test, and or other factors that indicate an ability to succeed. Well, invariably major colleges and universities use that to get athletes in under their athletic programs when they didn't match up with the standard grade point average aptitude test because the other factors indicated that they still matched regular standards. We said we wanted that. So we said it had to have a race neutral result. It isn't necessary that you have some ethnic status. It was that ethnic status had to have a provable or likely result that was negative, and you had to demonstrate superior whatever it was you had going in order to overcome it, and you were likely to help out impacted communities and the universities. It read almost exactly what Roberts put in his majority decision. Now, that said, in the early 1970s, there were some Negroes who were trying to get into UC Berkeley's medical school, and they kind of look like a prototype for what you see in the cotillion scenes for, say, Atlanta Housewives. And they came from families like Bill Cosby's Huxtables, where mom was a doctor or a lawyer and dad was a dentist, doctor, lawyer, whatever, businessman, and they had no economic privation, but they partied a lot or they weren't too bright, so their grades and aptitude tests weren't great. So they wanted to say, well, we're black, so they need to let us in just because of that. Well, all through California at the time, there was a big mess about that. And the black law students, the Asian contingent to this, the Hispanic one, we were saying, please don't do that because you're going to set up reverse discrimination, which is exactly what they did. It was a setup with the faculty. It was a setup with students like Bakke, who wound up getting ordered admitted anyway. And these folk who helped set it up got in there. Now, what has happened is the Supreme Court did not outlaw affirmative action. They just brought it back to being a race neutral situation that demonstrated an opportunity for a student to show he has overcome great adversity and therefore he is entitled to be considered as a normal admittee, as was or is anybody else. This is that thing, you know, if you're old enough, you had to submit a essay detailing why you should be admitted to the school, and you had to list your extracurricular activities. So that being the case, it was what it was. Now, when this happened in the late mid 60s, there weren't very many black students, say, at UCLA. There were 62,000 plus full-time students when I got there in 65, and that included, with my uh, freshman class, exactly 145 black full-time students and an equally small number of Hispanics, Asians, and everybody else. Now, the Japanese helped this out tremendously because a lot of them were born in the internment camps. Remember, this was 1965 on, so they would have been 19, 20 years old, or they were born in 1946, 47, like I was, to parents who had just been released from in these internment camps, and there was a sympathy for their plight. So when they joined in this thing, everybody says, well, yeah, you know, look what has happened. These people have come up to this point. They have done well in terms of the unconstitutional adversity. So you had the joint contingent of minority and ethnic minority students saying we want a fair break in this, not an advantage, but a fair break. Now, you
Mhm.
had some Negroes slash black slash colored students that selfishly tried to get it just on ethnic status alone, standing alone, that ruined it for everybody else for the next 50 some years. And now, paradoxically, you've got some Japanese students who are going to have accomplished something that's going to come back and bite them. If you look at the admissions for Japanese at that institution, it's 27 plus percent, which is higher than their population in the general um, run of citizens of this country. So what we have here is, wow, what are you cutting your nose to spite your face with? So this kind of thing is, once again, the product of a controlled media, and we go right back to square one. You just brought up about the Biden administration trying to control the media. So we can't have that. We need to get the full story out, and that's what I'm doing now. I was there. I helped participate in setting up these minority admissions programs that were not looked at as affirmative action at the time. They were looked at as fair admissions using the standard rules applied equally to all. And that's what we set up, and that's what ought to be in place right now.
Yeah. I want to ask you about Clarence Thomas because I'm old enough to, believe it or not, no, I'm just kidding. I'm old enough to remember all of the court proceedings when it came to when Clarence Thomas was confirmed and all the Anita Hill. And, so they've been attacking him since the very beginning. Now it's even more vicious because they don't agree with these latest court decisions. And I mean, to the point that people are even being like, he should be impeached. He's taking bribes. That was the latest thing I've heard, is that supposedly there's evidence of Clarence Thomas having taken bribes. I'm like, are you kidding me? Right now, there's evidence of Joe Biden, plenty of evidence of Joe Biden taking bribes. So what do you think of this vicious assault on Clarence? Why does he always get the most of the attacks?
Well, first off, looking at those three laptops, the crookedness uh, embraces the current incumbent in the White House. All right, now, crack house. Clarence Thomas, Yale tried to recruit me because I had such high scores, and they wanted me to come through the front door. They were offering me a lot of money to come so they could set up a minority admissions program. The idea was to expose all students to all walks of life and develop leadership. Well, I didn't go. I went to UCLA, where I already was, sunny California, pretty ladies in Hollywood and beaches and all of this other kind of stuff. And I think I was still in love with some woman that was at UCLA and I wanted to stay around. So, anyhow, Clarence Thomas, 2 years later, got admitted to Yale Law School under their affirmative action program, the thing that it had morphed into. It didn't do too well the first year, so that first summer between first year and second year, he went around the country talking against affirmative action. He did that the next summer, and then he got hired in a state's attorney general's office, supposedly doing tax. And since he graduated from Yale, he didn't have to take the bar. So for most of his career in that office, he never went to court, but he got taken around the country to talk against affirmative action. Well, he got rewarded by the Reagan administration. He got put in charge as just turned 30 years old. He was put in charge of EEOC, an entity that I once worked for. And his job was to be hatchet man. Well, he tried, and Congress wouldn't let him destroy the thing because at that point, rights for women in employment were becoming a very important issue. So he got rewarded eventually by being appointed to the Second Circuit Court of Appeals. And it seems the first time he set foot in a courtroom, he was an appellate judge for the federal Second Circuit. Now, after that, he got nominated to the U.S. Supreme Court. And quite frankly, his opinions, if he wrote them, are kind of on the crank side. And he was kind of, what is he doing? People didn't see anything outstanding, but I have to give it to him. I appreciate what he's done recently on the Second Amendment. But again, this is a crybaby thing. They've got people that they enjoyed having stuffed on the court because they pushed their particular agenda or a particular agenda, and now they want to attack somebody who hasn't done anything outside of the law, even if you don't agree with everything he's done. He's been an okay justice, no worse than a lot, better than a few. And they want to talk about let's impeach when that is not what the law is about. He has done nothing that is either one, provable bribery, treason, which is defined as the only crime in the Constitution, or misdemeanors or felonies in office. So there's no basis for any impeachment. That's just nonsense that's being pushed so you can get the public on board again with the party in question, saying these guys are trying to protect us. No, they're trying to oppress you and play Nazi on you, but you just don't realize it. Now, I'll say this. What I'm seeing right now bears out something I got from a Russian professor that I had. I was a teaching assistant for her way back in the 60s at the height of the Cold War, and she had at one time been the highest ranking woman on the Soviet Politburo and was in charge of propaganda at one time for the KGB. Now, she said America is in grave danger of becoming a fascist nation, not from any jackboot wearing, goose stepping, uniformed thugs, but from some, she put it, long haired hippies who would be glad to impose the worst mechanisms of fascism on the public in the name of trying to convert them to their cause. So that's exactly what we're looking at right now, and I think it's a disgrace, and this is another example. If you bring somebody in who scratches her head and does not know what a woman is when she's being asked as a front off for part of the Rainbow Coalition, such as it now exists, then don't talk to me about Clarence Thomas. There were a lot of judges who knew this woman who thought she was not the one. And as a matter of fact, I can think of Judge Bernice Donald that I mentored that was on the Sixth Circuit from Memphis who should have been nominated. I can think of Roger E. Clifton, who I've known for a long time, who's on the Second Circuit Court of Appeals. I can think of the daughter of my last divorce lawyer, who's on the Second Circuit Court of Appeals. She could have been nominated, and both of them are very able scholars, well versed in practicing the law, and they know what a woman is. So, yeah, don't talk.
Yeah. So, I mean, I so appreciate your matter of fact way of speaking. You're very objective. I wouldn't say that, I definitely wouldn't say you're left, but I definitely wouldn't say that you're right either. But like, since you threw out that term fascism, this is what happens when you're not afraid to be objective and just kind of down the middle. But because you're not following the narrative, because you're not trashing Clarence Thomas, just like, like their whole crew, are you getting people that are vicious toward you for not following that
Uh,
narrative, like saying, calling you a fascist, calling you extreme right, calling you
no,
even like an Uncle Tom?
I'm sure, but when it comes to that, I'll hold my credentials up against anybody you can find out there. And anybody you can name that's in the public eye would be more likely to represent in reality those things than me. I paid my dues, a whole lot of them. As I said, I'm one of those who actually drafted up proposals and did things back in the 60s that weren't this kind of little pussyfoot demonstration that you have now. So I was there. I helped set it up. They can go to hell because I'm one of the people that helped found the whole damn thing. Not as they had perverted it into, but as it was supposed to be, and as it still would have been operating had they not been so selfish. Now, that said, people don't say these things to my face
Hmm.
because there's another thing right now, which is this: I'm trying to get Memphis peaceful. It is the murder
Yeah.
capital of the country right now. So just 3 weeks ago, there was a street fest on a street that had the dubious distinction of having had more shootings than any other place in Memphis. And the citizens armed up to impose peace since the police couldn't. I was there. I spoke to everybody. I got up on stage, spoke, shook hands, walked around, was there for 3.5 hours. Well, the citizens were indeed armed up. It was peaceful, but there were 4 or 5 young 14, 15, 16-year olds who showed up with Glocks stuck down the front of their pants. Well, the sheriff showed up by then, and he's sitting there trying to turn a blind eye. So I went over and I confronted the young man. I said, "You got to go. This is not going to be allowed." So some of the adults backed me up, but there is the sheriff in uniform with uniformed deputies with their sidearms on, and they're scared to talk to these youth. But I didn't. See, I will stand up to somebody. I'm the village chieftain. I'm Uncle Joe. I'm Granddaddy Brown. And that's what it's all about. Somebody's got to take charge, and there is a vacuum in leadership in this country that the youth are filling out in the streets, and they don't know how to do it right because they haven't had proper home training, man training. They've been effeminized and a whole lot of other stuff. They're overly emotional, but they try to fill the vacuum. So we've got thugs running stuff instead of the responsible people. And most of what holds itself out as leadership in this country, let's put it this way. If you had a line of people suffering badly from diarrhea and a shortage of toilet paper, these folk could not get them to follow them to a porta potty well stocked with toilet tissue.
Well, I definitely love listening to you, but I am now out of time. How do folks support your bid for mayor of Memphis?
Okay, you can go to jjb2023.com. That's the website. JJB in 2023, anyway, that's a chant
I
we
was
have.
just going to say that is begging for a jingle. JJB
Yeah, there it
2023.
is. Ben Brown.
I like it.
Back your town. That's the other one too. Now, on the other side, it's summertime. You might want to use some of this fantastic barbecue sauce that I have, and you can go to jjbbbq.com and also jjbbbq.com. Lots of products. You can order it, and it's coming to your store shelves. It's already on the West Coast, and it's spreading other places. But if you want to see who owns your politician, go to this website. Do not Google it, just enter it directly into your browser. Go to followthemoney.org. Followthemoney.org.